So our first element, getting started with the right intensity. Yeah, no pain, no gain. It's a terrible phrase and it's ruined so many people, especially runners. I think we should be able to achieve no pain and consistent gain, okay? That's what we all want, right? So the starting intensity, we want it, well, ideally based on a percentage of a time trial result. So we can't just start our program with a time, a run at time trial speed. Obviously, we're not going to be able to keep that up throughout a program, but it is how a lot of people will train. They'll do a race, hit a good time, and then they'll try and hit that same time in the next training run. And of course, the body's fatigued. It doesn't work like that. We need to have room to progress. So we do always start you off lower. The distances should be no higher than 2 kilometers more than your previous longest run. So if you're coming in having not run at all for a month, we don't want you jumping straight into 8-10 kilometer runs. If you have been running regularly and you've got your distances up to 10k, then chances are your first long run with one of my programs will be 11 or 12 kilometers. So it'll be slightly more. And we want to keep the intensity, we want to be able to hold good technique and enjoy our runs, okay? We'll talk more about that later. So most of you have seen the pace chart that we hand out before some club runs. It's basically just for our newbies to decide which group they're going to run with. And it's based on their 5k time. Most people know their 5k time. Too many people work in miles per hour and minutes per mile and kilometers per hour. So just getting an idea of people's 5k time allows us to then allocate a decent group for them to run with. Obviously we want everyone to have a good experience in their first club run. Back to the program, I've pretty much covered this, but as we've seen, the starting intensity and volume is very low. We want it to be easy to begin a program. Element 2 is gradual progression. This is basically 3 different situations. Obviously for each situation we want to have our easy weeks and our hard weeks. So you can see here they should all match the intent. There should be climbing weeks and drop back weeks. I don't know how many of you can see the numbers or not, but what have we got? So here we go. So it's starting from a different distance. If we were only capable of running, or if we'd only run say 4 kilometers or 5 kilometers, and we're asking for a program that's going to build us up to a half marathon, okay, so the race being the half marathon, if we have only covered 4 kilometers in the past, the first long run is likely to be around 6 kilometers. Okay, we can see here that we're going to jump up by 2 kilometers per week, have a drop back week, 3 kilometers per week for 1 week, and then another drop back week, and then we're right up into the crux of it. So for any half marathon, we really want to be hitting 18 kilometers in a couple of weeks beforehand, before the race, 15 the weekend before the race. But obviously the higher our distances before we start the program, so if we're up at 10, it makes it a lot easier to get up to that 18 kilometer mark. And it might even mean that obviously with this one we've managed to get up to 18 4 weeks out from the race, so that when we do it the second time it's easier. We can actually go faster in that second time that we've hit 18 kilometers. That was really a magic distance for me with the half marathon. That's another way to look at it. If we've only given ourselves 8 weeks to build up to a half marathon, I've set the consistent being we've all run say 7 or 8 kilometers before deciding, hey, I want to run a half marathon. But if we decide that we want to run a half marathon and we've only got 8 weeks left, we can see here we're jumping up by 3 kilometers every weekend if we still want to give ourselves an easy week in that time, and then again it's up by 2 kilometers after that. Not giving yourself enough time. I mean, I get people asking for programs, 6, 8 weeks, even 10 weeks from a marathon. People ask me, I don't do much running, but I've signed up for a marathon and it's in 10 weeks. And you just want to be able to show them something like this to say, look how cushy it could be if you'd come to me 16 weeks before the race. Now that's my ideal duration to build up to a half marathon. I know it depends on what you've done before starting the program, what your distances have been, but this is it's just the more time you give yourself, the much easier it is, and the much more fun it is. The runs are so much easier. It really hurts to jump up by 3 or more kilometers from one long run to the next. So all that gradual progression, we just want to jump up by no more than 2 kilometers or 1.5 miles per week on that long run. And we don't want to increase the speed by too much either in any given session. Increasing it by more than 0.5 kilometer or 0.3 of a mile per hour can really make the next run much harder than we want it to be, assuming that you haven't dropped the distance back. Okay, you can jumping up a distance and dropping back speed can be a very safe and good thing to do, or doing it the other way around, increasing speed and dropping back distance. But we don't want to be doing both in our next session. And we're just looking at progressing things in weeks, not just when we're feeling good. Okay. Again, we want to, if we listen to how we're feeling too much, we can find ourselves running too hard and running ourselves into the ground. So element 3, we want a program to have an emphasis on recovery. Okay. Gains do happen when we're recovering, not while we're running. Okay, that's when the damage is done. We'll talk about how to make more of the training, but we all know that recovery is important, and we spend a lot more time recovering than we do spend training. But how good that recovery is very variable. So, a key way is to schedule in recovery weeks. Okay, so it's not an opportunity to skip trainings or drop the number you're doing. I see recovery weeks as an opportunity just to drop back, around 5%. So it could be decreasing the speed back or dropping the duration back 5 minutes or so on your runs for that particular week. We've got to resist the urge. An easy week, it's very often after a hard week, especially if we haven't been pushed as hard as we'd like, there's always an urge to find out what you can do in easy week, especially if you've had, say, the first 4 days of the week as easy week. You might have run a couple of runs in that time, and then come Saturday you're feeling so damn good because you've had 4 or 5 days of easy training that you want to blast whatever run you've got planned for the weekend, but then you've got to go into that rebuilding phase, and if you bash yourself on the last day of your easy week, then you're going to find that harder to deal with. We all know this stuff. We've got to eat well, sleep well, avoid stress, and do our rolling and stretching. Okay, we could harp on about it all day. We haven't talked about food and sleep much with these workshops, or at all, but they play a huge role. Okay, and a lot of people are lacking in knowing how to recover, with their food, and not many of us get the 8 hours sleep that we should really be having, especially when we're training hard. All right. So another element, the injury prevention plan. We all know there's loads of programs online that we can get for free. Very few of them will have an injury prevention plan in there. They are literally just waiting to come out anytime, aren't they? We've all got a weakness, which is, it's being irritated through running. When we increase our distances and our speeds, something inevitably comes up. We want to be proactive with preventing these from arising, right? Doing your strength, stability, flexibility, mobility work can really help to keep them at bay, and just make sure that your biggest weakness is actually quite strong. All right. Obviously, the weakest link in the chain is what's going to break. So the hard weeks, the fun weeks. If you've followed your program well, the hard weeks should be hard, but you should be prepared for them. You've built up your distances and all your speeds to deal with the hard weeks. Okay, we want you to finish your hard weeks feeling pretty shattered. Okay, feeling like you've earned an easy week. We don't want you just constantly feeling like you're at the same level every Sunday. You know, you've had the same sort of a week of training. It should be, God, I know I've had a hard week. I was running faster than I've ever run before, and I feel great because I've done it, but I need to go to bed now. All right. So you know, surviving the hard weeks down to how well you actually performed the previous week. So you usually will have like a moderate week before your hard weeks. If you've done that properly and not, you know, pushed yourself harder than you should have, then you should, as I said, you should feel good. You should feel like hard week is an achievable challenge. We know your training nutrition is important. We've got to make sure that you've actually got some energy in you to perform your runs, because each of them should push you. You know, every interval training you're thinking, right, I know that the last 2 reps of this set are going to be hard work. I'm going to have to dig deep. The last thing you want is to have some hunger pangs, you know, halfway through a session. Your concentration goes, and you know, obviously you've got to be taking on your protein, because if you're not, then your muscles aren't going to recover as fast, and you know, we should expect some muscle soreness in the hard week. Okay. Sleep, yeah, that's when the repair happens. We've got to try and get good quality sleep if you can. Blood sugar balance has a huge role to play with that. So if you're having too much coffee, stimulants, sugar through the day, then often we'll find ourselves waking up in the night because finally our cortisol levels have risen up to good levels, and then all of a sudden we're awake because we've got, you know, these good hormones happening in our body, but it's at 3 in the morning, and you know, at 3 in the afternoon we've been feeling rubbish because we haven't been eating properly all morning or at lunchtime. Again, obviously in the hard weeks there needs to be even more rolling and stretching to keep the weaknesses at bay. It's often a time that we can afford to maybe drop back on the strength work, but especially if you're doing, you know, full body training, I wouldn't back off the injury prevention specific exercises. You know, if you're doing some glute med work and stability work, but the stuff that's really draining your stores, you know, making it harder to perform your hard runs, sometimes you may need to drop back on those. They're not as important, right, as hitting your speeds in your fast runs. So yeah, again, you should learn a lot in your hard weeks. Okay, the long runs, that is effectively when you're finding out, right, so I can run 18 kilometers and this is the speed I managed for it, and it killed me. Okay, but this is how I want to feel it after my race. I want to feel like, you know, I knew that this was the speed I needed to hit, and today I've learned that I can achieve that. And you know, once I've had my taper, I know that I'm going to be able to do it even faster. Okay, so you'll learn a lot more from your hard weeks if you've built up to them properly and stuck to them, and you know, achieved each run the way it was set out to happen. So yeah, as I mentioned, running posture, technique, it really needs to remain priority. You know, obviously in the hard weeks, the hard runs, that's when the posture can start to suffer. We know that when we're low on energy, if we're breathing hard, it is much harder to focus on our posture. But you know, especially for your long runs, you don't want to find yourself having run too fast in the first half of a run, you know, slumped over, your center of gravity's forward, you've got a lot of weight going through your knees, through your shins, and you know, lo and behold, the next day you've got all sorts of aches and pains because you weren't holding yourself properly. It just comes down to the speeds and the distances being right. So yeah, we want to have unbreakable running posture, okay, right down to that final sprint to the line. It's amazing how good you can feel if you are holding yourself upright. You're able to still focus on your technique even though your lungs are killing you and you're trying to chase someone who you've been running next to the whole race. It's a great feeling to finish with good posture, and you can run a lot faster, you know, if you're holding yourself properly. You can distract yourself with technique. You know, on the long runs, they can get quite mind-numbing if you're not with anyone to chat with. But you know, swimmers, imagine swimming up and down a pool non-stop. You know, what do you think about? You know, the classic thought pattern is counting tiles. But we can't do that. We've got the environment to look at. but more importantly, when the going gets tough, we need to be just doing a constant self-analysis. How does it feel? Okay, I know that I'm puffing, and I know that my body is trying to find cheats, trying to take the pressure off, trying to pretend that gravity doesn't exist and that we don't need to hold ourselves tall. But it should be, when the going gets tough, that should be your main focus, is holding your posture, just thinking how each step feels. Oh, that was a bit too far into the middle. No, let's correct it. And just trying to keep the technique consistent. So in terms of working on technique, obviously with our program, we're working on it for 6 weeks of every 14. And that's plenty, I think, in order to prepare to get the most out of the second half of our 12-week progressive plan. We want to be able to stop the technique work, have taken the lessons from it and apply them to the harder weeks. Still being able to think about it, but not actually do the running drills and things like that. But yeah, it should be a constant thing. It should be constantly on your mind while you're running. So element 7, consistent learning. As we mentioned, we want to be learning from every run. And it means that we're not going to mess up any more races. Okay, it's easy to mess up a race, isn't it? You get your pacing wrong, like the graph we saw. If we're recording how things went, and it just needs to be even just one number. 1 to 10. How hard was that? 6, 8, 10. We learn how things are progressing. Obviously, sometimes we're doing a similar session in a easy week that we may have done a couple of weeks beforehand in a moderate week. We certainly do this with the progressive program. A lot of easy weeks are actually sessions that we've done 2 weeks beforehand. If we've rated the moderate session somewhere ideally around an 8, 8.5 out of 10, in the easy week we're doing the same thing again. Hopefully it's somewhere down at a 6 or 7. Okay, because you're fitter. You've done your hard week, and now you've recovered and you've got the adaptations that we want. Ideally, a program should adapt as required. Okay, so if you get a program off the internet, it'll be a printout. You download it, print it out. It's concrete basically from then. I mean, you can draw on it if you want to, if you need to change something. But if you're finding your runs too hard, the speeds that it's stipulating are too fast, you can't just keep flogging yourself at those speeds. You need to be able to adjust the plan. Okay, and yeah, monitoring speed and distance. I mean, you all know I love my Garmin's. Oh, that's not a Garmin. My Garmin watches. We want to know how every run went, and whether we stuck to what was in the program. This is how we learn. Okay. So, in summary, a good running program should get started at the right intensity, have slow but consistent progress, emphasize recovery, utilize proactive injury prevention techniques, use challenging hard weeks, should prioritize technique, and promote non-stop learning. Okay. Do we have any questions based on that? No? All right. Cool. Well, just so you know, we'll be offering 16, 14, 12-week and emergency programs for the Cheltenham Half. Obviously, starting in a few weeks. I think we're about 20 weeks away from the Cheltenham Half. I think a lot of us in the club will be doing it. And yeah, it's just a chance to get a bit proactive, start thinking about it. Obviously, if we can get the program set up before it's due to start, so ideally getting a time trial result first, and then we can have it properly laid out and find out what weaknesses need to be improved before we get to race day. But yeah, thanks for coming, and we can all get ready for a run now.
I haven't got a question, I've just got a comment. Because obviously I've been coming on and off for most of the 12 weeks, but as a sort of reluctant runner and somebody who isn't a runner, there's obviously people here who are good runners and things like that. seeing what you've done today, I can see all the little bits that you've been saying each week, but I perhaps didn't take them in. And I was always on the left-hand side of the column, if you know what I mean. I was still doing all the things wrong. And so I think for a lot of people, what you've set out today should happen right at the beginning. Because I found this invaluable tonight, to recognise in myself what I've been doing wrong. And I think for the next 12 weeks, I'll be able to go into it in a far better frame of mind and get that progress going.
No, I want to publish the program, to be honest. Obviously part of me, that competitive side of me, is thinking who's going to look at this, who's going to know what we're doing each week. But ideally we'd have this on the website and newsletters, so that people realise, oh, there's actually a reason to come to each training, because it's part of a wider plan. And we've got some great results from the time trials this week. I think the average improvement was about 2 minutes on from the guys we had, and we had some fast runners there. And we had some not so fast runners, but and we also had some some people who were injured through that 12-week span, and still the average was a 2-minute improvement over a 5k run. Now that is huge, right? We all would die for that sort of improvement on our half marathon 10k times, and this is a 5k time, so it's even more significant. So yeah, again, just the more trainings you come to, the better. All right. But yeah, thanks for that.